Right, the skin is off the belly. Kind of made an okay-ish job of it. I'm not sure if I was someone else, I would pay me to skin pork bellies. There's a little bit of meat left on it. That'd be a nice treat for someone with the crackling. And I've sliced through the skin in a few places, but that doesn't really matter. So we'll talk about making pork cracklings. Difficult to handle is pork belly because it wants to slip about a place. And if you've got slippy things and using knives that are sharp or blunt, as mine are, it's going to be a little bit dangerous. So I've thought of different ways that you can do this to make it as easy as possible. I've rolled up the pork belly into a sausage shape, and I'm going to slice it that way, which will be relatively easy rather than using a craft knife. It's just difficult if you're going to use a Stanley knife or a craft knife to draw a knife across, even if it's as sharp as a Stanley knife. It's difficult, and you're going to get really wonky lines, and potentially you're going to slice yourself. It's just kind of not worth it. An easier method would be to freeze the pork belly, freeze the skin, and then it's more rigid, and that'll be an easier way to do it. Not fully freeze it, but just so it hardens up in the freezer, and then pull it out and then slice it. But I don't really like freezing things, defrosting them and then cooking with them. Certainly if you're making cured products, you should never really use meat that's been frozen and then use it to make a sausage. If you're going to use fresh sausages, that's fine, but if you're going to cure meat, it doesn't work, and it tends to make things go off. I don't know why. There will be a science behind it, but I just never do. So, skin rolled up, nice and tight-ish, and then we're going to cut along that way, and then we'll get some nice long shards of pork skin for crackling. So as you're going to grip it, keep your fingers out of the way, and then long strokes with your knife. That way, and then you'll see that we get nice long lengths of skin like that. I've already done a few already, so I'll put them on the tray and we'll show what we're doing. It's excuse the kitchen paper, the baking parchment. It's something I use something else. I don't tend to waste things when I'm at home. When you're at work, that's a completely different thing. But if I'm at home and if I can use baking parchment again for something, I just don't like waste. So heavy tray. You're going to need two of them. Baking parchment. Lay your pork belly skin out on the baking parchment, and then you want another layer of baking parchment on top, which will keep it flat. You can see all the grease from my fingers. And then you want another not so clean tray on the top of that. What that will do is the baking parchment is there so it doesn't stick to anything, and it'll come off nice and clean. And the trays are there to keep it flat. You can have them curly by all means. I just like them in long lengths, so I can put them in a jar and then I'm going to give them away as a present, or I can just put them in a jar or a container and they're all flat, take up less space, and then they can just sit in the fridge until I want to use them or eat them, late night munches and all that kind of thing. But just with the ethos of not really wanting to throw anything away. The ribs have been in for, I suppose, 15 minutes, 15-20 minutes. I'll just give it a little longer, and I'll put these the crackling in the oven at the same time once I turn it down to about 120, and then they can just sit, and then what we'll do is they'll slowly render and crisp up over time. If the oven's on, you might as well be cooking two things at once. So that I never really have exact science with things. I tend to see how things go, and then if I need to turn things down or turn the oven up at some point in the cooking, then that's fine. If they are, I'll show you. But once they're cooked all the way through and they start to go crispy, what you can do is you can turn up the heat, and that will puff up the cracklings and make them much nicer to taste, and a lot easier to eat rather than like rawhide with a bit of fat on it. Yeah, so that's it. So I'll carry on doing the rest of the pork skin, and then I think there might be 2 or 3 trays worth of crackling I'm doing, but that'll be fine. And then as well, there was this bit of fat and sinew that came off the pork belly. I'm going to render that down at the same time with the crackling, because it'll render some of this fat out, and then I can use that fat for other things, because I don't like waste. And that sinew will probably crisp up quite nicely actually, and be a nice little treat for me later on. So I'll do that. I'll come back and I'll show you what happens when they're all finished. Remember something really important. The baking parchment needs to be bigger than the tray, because fat's going to render out of the skin, which will make a mess of your tray. So it's better to have the paper bigger, and then it'll catch all the fat, and then you can simply drain it off as you go. So all nice and neatly put out on there. More baking parchment on top, and then another tray on top of that, and then I'll keep everything nice and flat. I don't think there's any need for any weights. Shouldn't be. If it's not, well, we'll see how it goes. And then we'll just show what's going on in the oven, because it's a bit full. And there's never enough oven space, and there's never enough fridge space. So what I've done, as you can see down the bottom of the what I've done down the bottom of the oven is I put a tray at the bottom of the oven, which I then can rest things on top. So I've got essentially 3 shelves in the oven. So 3 trays of pork scratchings and 1 of the ribs. So it's up to 200. I'm going to turn it down to 120 now. So pork scratchings are resting on top of the ribs, pork scratchings are resting on top of the ribs, and then there's some more pork scratchings and more pork scratchings. So the oven's down at 120, and we'll just let it cook and see how it goes. Right, quick lesson on rendering fat, if you want to do it. Personally, I don't like putting anything in the bin that I can turn into or use. So the thought of putting fat that I could render down in the bin, it just seems very, very wasteful. So I'm actually making chorizo, and I kept some of the fat back from the pork belly because I thought it might be a little bit too. I didn't know what kind of how fatty the pork belly was going to be once it was minced, so I cut some of the fat off. So I'm not mincing the whole pork belly with all the fat, and then just in case that there was too much fat in the pork belly, I just kind of wanted to a little bit more control about how much fat was going in. So this is the spare fat, which I'm not going to use in the chorizo. This is a long way of going around things. So this is the fat that I'm not going to put into the chorizo, so I'm going to render it down. What will happen is all the fat, lard essentially, well no, not essentially, because the lard actually comes from a certain part of the pig, which is, but anyway, much too much detail. So this is, I'm going to render this down in the oven. The oven's on because I'm cooking ribs, I'm cooking pork crackling, and there's a little bit of space left, so I'm going to render this fat down, and the fat will come out of it, and then we'll be left with the connective tissue, which will start to go crispy. And if you're a glutton, it's really, really, really tasty and really nice to eat. Well, not too much of it because it's starting to make you feel sick. So you're going to get 2 things out of one. You're going to get this lovely lard, which you can then roast potatoes in, fry bacon, do anything you want with, use an ingredient, make pastry, and then you're also going to get these crispy little morsels of fat and meat, which you can feed to the animals. Not carnivorous animals. Don't be feeding meat to vegetarian animals, or you can eat it yourself. Really long-winded way of doing something, this is relatively straightforward. Low and slow in an oven. There are different ways of rendering fat. I might get into that in different videos in the future, but this is just, as the oven's on, this is just an easy way of doing it. Foil and baking parchment. This just makes it easier to pour off the fat and crisp up the connective tissues that are left afterwards. Once things start to stick to aluminium foil, so it's better to have the baking parchment, just for the sake of ease, and you're not making a mess out of a tray which will need soaking, and then you need to soak it and then wash it, and your tray start getting a bit knackered. So this is just an easier way of doing it, easier, cleaner way. Yeah, that's pretty it. So it's going to go in the oven. The oven's on at 120, so it's going to go in at 120, which is about the right kind of temperature you want to be doing for rendering. Okay, I think that's it. Possibly, maybe. I might add another bit, but we'll come back. Right, these are the results of the pork crackling and the rendered down fat. As you can see, lots and lots and lots of fat has come out of that. Well, lard has come out of that fat that I minced down, and it started to go crispy. But you can see all that fat there. What I'll do is I'll pull that off, the excess fat off into something, and re-roast what's left a little bit more, and then it'll get the last of the fat out, and it'll just crisp it up, because it's not gonna get really crispy unless I get rid of that fat. And then these are the pork scratchings. These just need the fat nice and crisp, as you can hear. But I want them to go a little bit more like that than that. So I'm going to drain that fat off, the excess there. I'm going to put them back through the oven at a higher temperature, maybe 200, just to crisp them up. Hopefully it'll work, as done in the past. And then they'll become more like that and less like that. And that fat, obviously, I'll add to the fat that I've rendered out of there, and then I'll use it for anything. It makes the best pastry you've ever tasted. A savoury pastry, obviously, but it makes the best pastry ever. Much better than using shop-bought lard or butter. Maybe not butter, I don't know. But anyway, that's what I'm going to do, and then we'll come back and show what's happened. Right, and we're done. So we'll just have a snap a bit of crackling. So nice and brittle. It tastes really nice as well. These are the crunchy bits from the rendered down fat. They are really tasty, actually, and nice and crunchy. You just need to drain a little bit more fat off them. I'd feed that to. I'd probably put it in something. It'd be nice as a crunchy topping on something, like on top of cauliflower cheese. Actually, if you crunched it up a little bit more, chopped it up a little bit more, and put it on top of cauliflower cheese, that would be delicious, as long as people didn't know what they were eating, obviously. But that is delicious, and you can see here how much fat's come out of the making the crackling and rendering that fat down. Some people are going to be grossed out by that amount of fat and using it. I think that's one of the best things ever. That will make really good roast potatoes. Well, that loads of flavour to it. Certainly much more than the lard that you would buy, and it's a byproduct of something else that we've been doing. So it's free and it's flavour, which to my mind, if something's free and it gives you some flavour, then it's a win-win. So that's it. I think, yeah. I won't recall it. I'll jar that up, put it in a nice jar, and it'll go to a friend for their birthday. That I'll probably end up just putting that in the bin, because I've got no use to it, and the thought of eating it all by myself is a little bit ridiculous. And the fat I'll save for whatever I'm doing, whenever I need some lard, or I'm going to fry something. I think that's it. Yes, I think we're done for now.